The night inside the billionaire boss's mansion was supposed to be calm, peaceful, and filled with celebration. Crystal chandeliers shimmered across the marble floors, while the city lights outside painted golden reflections through the massive glass windows. Staff members moved quietly through the hallways, preparing for what was meant to be a private family dinner. But within seconds, the entire atmosphere changed when a desperate scream echoed from the master bedroom. The billionaire boss, known across the country for his powerful business empire and unshakable confidence, rushed upstairs with panic written across his face for the first time in years. Inside the room, his wife lay weak and barely conscious, her breathing shallow, her hand trembling as she tried to hold on to life. Doctors who had been monitoring her condition suddenly stepped back, their faces pale with worry. One of them checked his watch and spoke words that froze everyone in the room. He quietly explained that the billionaire boss's wife had only 1 hour to live if something miraculous didn't happen. The room fell into complete silence. The billionaire, who had built companies worth billions, who could solve almost any problem with money and influence, stood helpless beside his wife's bed. Expensive machines surrounded her, beeping softly as they monitored her fading heartbeat. He held her hand tightly, whispering promises, praying and searching for any solution, but nothing seemed enough to stop time from slipping away. Outside the room, the mansion staff gathered in fear and sadness. Among them stood a poor maid who had been working in the mansion for years. She was known for staying quiet, working long hours, and never drawing attention to herself. Many staff members barely noticed her presence, yet she had silently watched the family through their happiest and darkest moments. As the doctors rushed in and out of the room, discussing emergency options and shaking their heads, the maid listened carefully. Her eyes filled with concern, but there was something else in her expression, something that looked like determination mixed with a hidden secret. The billionaire boss stepped out into the hallway, his face broken with fear and desperation. He demanded every doctor, every specialist, and every possible treatment be arranged immediately. Calls were made to the best hospitals, private air ambulances, and medical experts across the country. But time was moving faster than any solution could arrive. The staff watched him, shocked to see a man who controlled global companies now struggling to save the one person he loved the most. Meanwhile, the poor maid slowly stepped closer to the hallway, her hands trembling as she clutched something small inside her pocket. She remembered a moment from years ago, a memory she had never shared with anyone in the mansion. Her breathing became heavier as she realized what she was thinking could change everything. The doctors were losing hope. The billionaire boss was losing strength. The ticking clock on the hallway wall grew louder with every passing second. The maid looked toward the bedroom door, knowing that if she spoke up, it could risk her job, her safety, and possibly her future. But if she stayed silent, the billionaire boss's wife might not survive the night. As the final minutes of that crucial hour began to slip away, the poor maid slowly stepped forward and spoke words that made everyone turn toward her in shock, leaving the entire mansion frozen in disbelief about what she was about to do next. The hallway fell silent as every pair of eyes shifted toward the poor maid. Even the sound of the medical machines inside the bedroom seemed distant for a moment. The billionaire boss stared at her, confused and emotionally exhausted. He had seen her working in the mansion for years, cleaning the floors, helping in the kitchen, and quietly caring for small household tasks, but he had never heard her speak with such urgency before. The maid's hands trembled slightly as she gathered the courage to speak again. She softly said that she might know something that could help the billionaire boss's wife, but she needed permission to explain without interruption. Some of the doctors exchanged doubtful glances. One of them gently tried to step forward, reminding the billionaire boss that they were running out of time and that unverified ideas could create false hope. But the boss raised his hand, signaling everyone to stay quiet. Something in the maid's voice carried honesty and desperation that he could not ignore. He nodded slowly, giving her permission to speak. The staff standing nearby leaned closer, their curiosity growing as tension filled the hallway. The maid explained that before she started working at the billionaire mansion, she had lived in a small village far from the city. Her family had struggled financially, and she had taken several jobs to support them. During that time, she had worked for an elderly woman known in her village for helping people during medical emergencies when hospitals were too far away. The elderly woman was not a doctor, but she had learned traditional healing techniques from her ancestors. The maid carefully shared that she had spent years assisting that woman, observing treatments that focus on rare herbal remedies and emergency care methods used when modern facilities were unavailable. The doctors listening to her story looked skeptical, but remained silent as the billionaire boss continued watching her carefully. The maid admitted she had never spoken about this part of her life because she feared people in the city would not believe her. She also said she had never used those skills inside the mansion because she respected the professional doctors caring for the family. However, when she overheard the doctors discussing the sudden reaction happening inside the billionaire boss's wife's body, she remembered a similar situation she had witnessed years ago in her village. The billionaire boss stepped closer, his eyes filled with fragile hope. He asked her directly if she truly believed she could help his wife survive this medical crisis. The maid hesitated, clearly afraid of giving a promise she could not guarantee. She carefully explained that what she knew might not be a complete solution, but it could possibly stabilize her condition long enough for doctors to continue advanced treatment. Her voice shook as she revealed that she still carried a small pouch in her pocket containing a rare herbal mixture she had prepared years ago under the elderly woman's guidance, something she had kept for emergencies. One of the senior doctors finally spoke, explaining that they could not allow any treatment that had not been medically approved, especially in such a critical condition. The hallway once again filled with arguments, fear, and rising tension. The billionaire boss looked torn between trusting advanced medical science and taking a desperate chance on the maid's mysterious knowledge. Time continued slipping away as another doctor rushed out of the bedroom, quietly informing them that the billionaire boss's wife's condition was becoming more unstable. The maid lowered her eyes, ready to step back, believing her attempt to help had only created more chaos. But as she slowly turned, the billionaire boss suddenly called her name, his voice filled with a mixture of fear, trust, and urgency, leaving everyone holding their breath as he prepared to make a decision that could change everything. The billionaire boss's voice echoed through the hallway as he called the maid back. She stopped instantly, her heart pounding as she slowly turned to face him. His eyes showed a man standing between logic and desperation. He asked the doctors one simple question: if they had any guaranteed solution within the remaining time. The doctors exchanged heavy looks before one of them quietly admitted that they were trying everything possible, but her body was not responding the way they expected. The room grew tense again, as those words carried both honesty and fear. The boss pressed his lips together, his mind racing through memories of his wife laughing in the garden, supporting him when his first company almost failed, and standing beside him during every victory he had ever achieved. Meanwhile, inside the bedroom, machines continued their steady but concerning rhythm. Nurses adjusted monitors and checked medical reports while whispering updates to each other. One young nurse glanced toward the door, silently hoping someone outside would bring new hope. She had seen many critical cases during her career, but something about this family felt different. The billionaire boss's wife was known among the staff for her kindness. She remembered birthdays of employees, helped staff members during personal struggles, and often spoke to them like family rather than workers. The nurse swallowed her fear as she carefully adjusted the oxygen support, silently wishing time would slow down. Back in the hallway, the senior doctor explained the risks of allowing any unverified treatment. He spoke calmly but firmly, reminding the boss that even a small unknown reaction could make the condition worse. Another doctor supported him, adding that they were already coordinating with top medical specialists who were reviewing her case remotely. However, the boss knew those specialists might not reach them before time ran out. His hands trembled slightly as he looked toward the maid, who stood quietly, clearly overwhelmed by the attention she had never experienced before. The maid's mind drifted back to her village memories. She remembered nights when villagers gathered outside the elderly woman's small home, waiting for help during emergencies when roads were blocked or storms prevented travel. She remembered learning how the elderly woman always spoke about balance, patience, and timing. The maid had never considered herself skilled enough to practice those methods alone. She had always believed her role was simply to assist, observe, and learn. But now, standing inside one of the richest mansions in the country, she felt the weight of those forgotten lessons pressing heavily on her shoulders. Nearby, the mansion's head housekeeper watched the situation carefully. She had worked in the house longer than anyone else and knew how much the boss trusted professional structure and control. Seeing him hesitate showed how deeply this crisis was affecting him. She quietly stepped closer to the maid and whispered, asking if she truly believed her knowledge could help. The maid answered honestly, saying she did not know if it would cure anything, but she believed it might by time. Her voice carried fear, but also quiet determination. Suddenly, another update came from inside the bedroom. The medical team noticed slight fluctuations in the billionaire boss's wife's vital signs, increasing urgency among the doctors. The hallway became louder as staff rushed past, carrying equipment and speaking into communication devices. The ticking wall clock seemed louder than ever. The boss closed his eyes for a brief moment, as if weighing every risk, every possibility, and every regret he might carry if he chose wrong. When he finally opened his eyes, he looked at both the doctors and the maid, knowing that whatever decision he made next would place someone's trust, reputation, and possibly his wife's life on a fragile line, while the final minutes of that terrifying hour continued slipping away faster than anyone was ready to accept. The billionaire boss slowly walked toward the bedroom door, his steps heavy as if every movement carried the weight of his entire world. The hallway behind him remained filled with doctors, staff members, and silent prayers that no one dared to speak aloud. The poor maid stood frozen near the wall, clutching the small pouch in her hand, her mind filled with fear and memories that refused to stay quiet. She watched the boss pause near the door, his hand resting against the polished wooden frame as he looked inside at his wife lying motionless among the glowing medical monitors. Inside the room, the atmosphere felt even more intense. The steady beeping of machines sounded sharper, almost echoing through the walls. The billionaire boss's wife lay pale, her breathing uneven but still fighting. A nurse carefully adjusted the monitoring screen, while another doctor reviewed emergency medical reports on a tablet. The boss stepped closer to the bed, gently brushing his wife's hand with his fingers. His voice was barely a whisper as he spoke to her, reminding her of promises they had made to grow old together, reminding her of their children waiting in another city, unaware of the terrifying battle happening inside this mansion. Behind him, the doctors continued discussing advanced emergency procedures. Some believed there was still a narrow medical path they could attempt, while others worried it might be too risky given her weakening condition. Their voices remained professional, but the tension in their faces revealed how serious the medical crisis had become. Every passing minute increased the pressure, and the clock mounted on the bedroom wall showed time slipping closer to the final moments of that dangerous hour. Outside the room, the mansion staff gathered quietly, some holding each other's hands, others silently crying. The head housekeeper tried to keep everyone calm, but even she could not hide her fear. The poor maid stood slightly apart from the others, staring at the closed bedroom door. Her breathing grew heavier as she remembered the elderly woman's words from years ago, teaching her that sometimes helping someone required courage more than knowledge. She slowly opened her palm, looking at the small pouch containing the herbal mixture, her fingers trembling as she wondered whether she was strong enough to speak again. Suddenly, the bedroom door opened as one of the junior doctors stepped out quickly, requesting additional medical supplies. His expression revealed growing urgency, and his rushed footsteps echoed down the hallway. The billionaire boss followed him out moments later, his face pale and filled with silent panic. He asked for honest answers, not hopeful guesses. The senior doctor spoke carefully, explaining that her body was becoming less responsive to the current treatment. He emphasized that they were reaching a critical point where every decision could bring unpredictable consequences. The boss turned toward the maid again, his eyes searching for certainty that she herself did not fully have. The entire hallway seemed to freeze as he stepped closer to her. He asked her one question: if she truly believed her knowledge could help stabilize his wife even for a short time. The maid swallowed hard, her voice shaking as she admitted she could not promise success, but she believed the mixture might help support breathing stability based on what she had witnessed years ago. The doctors immediately raised concerns, explaining the unknown effects and the possibility of interference with ongoing treatment. The debate grew louder as tension reached its highest point. The ticking clock on the wall now sounded like a countdown, echoing through every heart in the mansion. The boss looked from the doctors to the maid, his hands shaking slightly as he realized there was no safe choice left. The nurse rushed out again, whispering urgent updates about falling stability inside the room. The boss closed his eyes, taking a deep breath as if preparing to step into a decision that could either create a miracle or leave him with a lifetime of unanswered questions, while the maid tightened her grip on the pouch, waiting for the moment that could change all their lives forever. The billionaire boss stood frozen, his mind caught between trust and fear, when suddenly another voice broke through the tension. One of the senior doctors, who had been quietly reviewing the billionaire boss's wife's medical history on a tablet, stepped forward with a troubled expression. He asked the boss if his wife had ever mentioned receiving treatment or medication outside of the hospital during the past few months. The question confused everyone in the hallway. The boss frowned, trying to recall, but before he could answer, the doctor explained that he had noticed unusual patterns in her recent medical reports that suggested her condition might not have developed naturally. The hallway fell silent again, but this silence carried a heavier, more dangerous feeling. The doctor continued carefully, saying that certain chemical traces in her bloodstream showed signs of long-term exposure to something uncommon, something that did not match her prescribed medications. The words hit the billionaire boss like a shock. He immediately insisted that his wife had always followed professional medical advice and had regular checkups. The doctors exchanged uncertain glances, clearly concerned that they might be facing a deeper medical mystery rather than a sudden illness. The poor maid listened closely, her heart racing as the conversation took a frightening turn. She noticed the boss's personal assistant standing near the far end of the hallway, looking unusually nervous. The assistant had managed the wife's personal schedule, medications, and private wellness routine for years. The maid remembered several times when she had seen packages delivered privately, items that were never recorded in the main household inventory. At the time, she had ignored it, believing it was part of the wealthy lifestyle she did not understand. But now, those memories started to feel unsettling. Inside the bedroom, the nurses continued adjusting equipment as the billionaire boss's wife struggled to maintain stable breathing. The monitors showed inconsistent patterns, increasing the urgency among the medical team. One nurse rushed out again, informing the doctors that her condition was becoming unpredictable, almost as if her body was reacting to something hidden beneath the surface. The senior doctor quickly returned inside, but the tension he left behind continued spreading through the hallway like a silent storm. The billionaire boss turned toward his assistant, asking direct questions about his wife's recent treatments, supplements, or alternative therapies. The assistant hesitated before answering, explaining that the wife had been secretly consulting a private wellness specialist who had promised to strengthen her health and reduce stress naturally. The boss stared at him in disbelief, struggling to understand why his wife would hide something so important. The assistant quickly added that the specialist was highly recommended among elite social circles and had treated several influential families. The maid felt a sudden chill run through her as she heard the description. She slowly stepped forward again, explaining that certain traditional mixtures, when combined with unknown chemical substances, could create dangerous reactions instead of healing effects. Her voice trembled as she admitted that if the wife had unknowingly consumed something harmful, the herbal mixture she carried might react differently than expected. The doctors overheard her words and quickly turned toward her, realizing that the situation had become even more complicated than they imagined. Meanwhile, one of the security staff rushed into the hallway, informing the boss that attempts to contact the private wellness specialist had failed. The clinic listed under the specialist's name appeared to be temporarily closed, and their contact numbers were suddenly unreachable. The billionaire boss felt his chest tighten as the possibility of hidden deception began forming in his mind. The clock on the wall showed that only minutes remained, while new doubts, secrets, and unanswered questions surrounded them. As the doctors rushed back inside to manage the worsening medical crisis, the billionaire boss looked at the maid once more, now realizing that saving his wife might not only depend on medical treatment or ancient knowledge, but also on uncovering a truth that could be far more dangerous than the illness itself. The billionaire boss felt the world around him closing in as the final minutes ticked away. The doctors inside the bedroom called urgently for him, their voices tense as they struggled to stabilize his wife's condition. He rushed inside, his heart pounding louder than the medical machine surrounding her. The senior doctor explained that her body was reacting unpredictably, as if something inside her system was blocking the treatment from working properly. They believed the unknown substance found in her bloodstream was interfering with every attempt to support her breathing and circulation. The boss looked toward the poor maid, who had quietly followed him into the room. Her hands trembled as she held the small pouch, but her eyes showed a calm determination that surprised everyone. She stepped closer to the senior doctor and explained carefully that the mixture she carried was not meant to cure illness directly. Instead, it was traditionally used to balance sudden internal reactions, helping the body remain stable during severe stress. She spoke honestly, admitting again that she could not guarantee success, but she believed this might help slow the dangerous reactions spreading through the billionaire boss's wife system. The room filled with tension as the doctors exchanged looks. Time was nearly gone. The senior doctor finally spoke, saying that standard treatment was failing, and they were running out of safe options. After a heavy pause, he nodded slightly, agreeing to allow the maid's mixture to be used carefully alongside the medical support already in place. The billionaire boss closed his eyes for a moment, silently placing his trust in both science and hope. The maid carefully prepared the herbal mixture under the doctor's supervision. Her fingers shook as she remembered every instruction the elderly woman had once taught her. The nurse assisted as the mixture was carefully introduced in a controlled way, while the machines continued their tense rhythm. For several long seconds, nothing changed. The boss held his wife's hand tightly, whispering softly to her, his voice breaking with fear. Then, slowly, the monitor displayed a slight improvement in her breathing pattern. The nurses leaned closer, watching the numbers adjust. The senior doctor immediately instructed the team to continue advanced treatment while monitoring her reaction carefully. The room filled with cautious movement as hope returned, fragile but real. The billionaire boss stared at the screen, barely believing what he was seeing. His wife's breathing began stabilizing, and her pulse, though weak, became more consistent. The staff exchanged emotional glances as relief spread quietly through the room. The boss turned toward the maid, his eyes filled with gratitude he could not express in words. She stepped back quietly, overwhelmed, never expecting to stand at the center of such a moment. The doctors continued working, explaining that her condition was still critical, but now stable enough for further treatment. The terrifying hour that once seemed impossible to survive had passed. But just as relief began settling into the room, another nurse entered with new laboratory results that had arrived moments earlier. The senior doctor reviewed the report, his expression slowly shifting from relief to concern. He revealed that the unknown substance found in the wife system was not accidental. The analysis suggested it had been slowly introduced over time in extremely small amounts, making it nearly impossible to detect during routine health checks. The billionaire boss felt the air leave his lungs as he processed the words. He turned slowly toward the doorway, where his personal assistant stood pale and shaking, clearly overhearing everything. The room fell silent once again as the realization formed that someone close to the family may have played a hidden role in the mysterious medical crisis. Meanwhile, the billionaire boss's wife remained stable but unconscious, unaware that surviving the hour had only uncovered a deeper betrayal waiting just beyond the hospital monitors. The silence inside the bedroom felt heavier than any moment before. The billionaire boss slowly turned toward his personal assistant, whose hands trembled as he tried to avoid eye contact. Security staff standing nearby noticed the tension and stepped closer, sensing something was wrong. The senior doctor quietly signaled for the medical team to continue focusing on stabilizing the billionaire boss's wife, whose breathing had now become more regular under close monitoring. The machines continued their steady rhythm, offering a fragile sense of relief that she had survived the most dangerous part of the medical crisis. The boss walked toward the assistant, his voice calm but filled with controlled emotion. He asked one simple question: who introduced a private wellness specialist to his wife? The assistant hesitated, his face turning pale as pressure built around him. After a long pause, he admitted that he had arranged a connection through a business acquaintance who claimed the specialist worked with high-profile families and promised natural health improvements. He explained that the wife had been under heavy stress due to charity responsibilities and social expectations, and she had trusted the specialist's guidance. The assistant insisted he never intended to cause harm and believed the treatments were safe. Security staff quickly escorted him away as investigations were ordered immediately. Later findings revealed that the so-called wellness specialist had been providing unverified supplements disguised as luxury health treatments to several wealthy clients. The substances, though presented as harmless, were slowly weakening the body's natural balance. Authorities later confirmed that financial fraud was involved, targeting elite families through false promises of premium healthcare solutions. The assistant involvement was found to be careless rather than intentional, but his poor judgment had opened the door to a dangerous medical emergency that nearly cost a life. Hours later, the mansion felt quieter, but this silence carried relief instead of fear. The billionaire boss remained beside his wife's hospital bed as she slowly regained consciousness under professional medical supervision. When she finally opened her eyes, her weak smile brought tears to his face. He held her hand gently, overwhelmed by gratitude that he had not lost her. The doctors explained that her recovery would take time, but her condition was now stable thanks to the combined emergency treatment and the unexpected support that helped her body respond again. The boss later called the poor maid into the room. She walked in nervously, still dressed in her simple uniform, unsure how to face the family after everything that had happened. The billionaire boss and his wife thanked her with deep sincerity, acknowledging that her courage, honesty, and forgotten knowledge had played a powerful role in saving her life. The wife held the maid's hand warmly, reminding her that true strength often comes from the most unexpected places. The boss assured her that her role in the mansion would never be seen the same way again, offering her education opportunities and support for her family, not as charity but as respect for her bravery. In the following weeks, the mansion staff grew closer, realizing how quickly life can change despite wealth and status. The billionaire boss publicly supported stronger awareness about verified healthcare and responsible wellness practices, warning others about hidden medical risks disguised as luxury solutions. The poor maid quietly returned to her duties, but she carried a new confidence, knowing that her past struggles and village lessons had helped protect a life when modern answers were running out. The mansion that once echoed with fear now carried a deeper sense of humanity. The billionaire boss often reflected on how money, power, and success could never replace trust, loyalty, and the courage to listen to voices often ignored. And every time he saw his wife smile again, he remembered that sometimes miracles are not created by wealth or influence, but by ordinary people who choose to step forward when hope feels impossible.